Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. I'm saving this episode 3847 BN. Today's date is February 24th, 2026, and the title of the episode is Deep State Begins Process to Push World War III, Sum of All Fears. At Dawn, Trump Wins. Let me ask you a question. You ever see something and instantly know it's going to turn heads? That's exactly what happened when I saw these Trump Never Surrender gold sneakers. These aren't subtle, and they're not supposed to be. Gold finish, red, white, and blue details. Never Surrender right on the shoe. You put these on, people definitely notice, period. What surprised me most? They're actually comfortable. Solid build, lightweight, and wearable. Not just something you buy and leave in the box. These are made to be worn and seen. And the message hit. Never Surrender isn't just branding, it's an attitude. Whether you're out running errands or showing up somewhere you want to make a statement, these do exactly that without saying a word. They're also a killer gift. If you got a Trump supporter, a collector, or someone who likes bold, unapologetic style, this is a win. They're unique, they're different, they're just awesome. One more thing that matters. These are a limited run, numbered pairs. Once they're gone, they're gone. If you want to grab a pair, our loyal audience will get 30% discount while inventory lasts. Go to themagaoffers.com/X22. That is themagaoffers.com/X22. And if you rather order by phone or talk to someone directly, you can call 855-550-MAGA. And be sure to use my code for even more savings when you call. Again, that number is 855-550-6242 or 855-550-MAGA. If these speak to you, don't wait on this. Inventory is moving fast, and once these sell out, that's it. Grab your pair and make a statement. Visit themagaoffers.com/X22 or call 855-550-MAGA and give them promo code X22 for an even bigger deal. Or just click the link in the description. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, the deep state, corrupt politicians, big tech, fake news, the puppet masters, you can see that Trump is winning every single day. The people are winning every single day. And basically, Trump is dismantling the entire system that they've created over the many, many years. And you can see this also has to include the Federal Reserve, and that's exactly what he's doing. So he's removing their source of funding, which is the Federal Reserve, because that's a loan sharking system. He's dismantling the deep state players across the world. He started with Venezuela, got rid of Venezuela, moving on to Iran, and then finally with Ukraine. I think the other countries, they're just going to fall in line afterwards because they'll have no choice whatsoever. And basically, Trump is shutting down their flow of funds across the world as he dismantles everything. And he pretty much shut off the spigot of funds here in this country. Now, he started with the middleman. The middleman is D.C. with USAID, the NGOs, the foreign countries. Basically, what he did was he stopped the funding from this point because he still needs the Federal Reserve in the background funding the country. If he went to the source of the problem, which he eventually will, everything would have collapsed. So he said, you know something? We need to find out how they're running the money through all these different agencies, how they're using the 14 computers, what NGOs they're using. Are they funding their operation through Venezuela, Iran, Ukraine? And the answer, of course, is yes. So basically, he looked at this and said, okay, we can shut it down from the center point and the funding will not go to them anymore. And basically, they're now starved for funds. Now, the shutdown of the government is not affecting the red states. It's actually affecting more of the blue states because you have to remember, the money laundering is going through the blue states. The money's not going there to help the people of those states. They have a vast amount of money flowing through the state compared to the red states. And this is why it's hurting the blue states quite a bit because, again, they don't have the funds to keep their system alive. Remember, they're sanctuary cities. They're bringing in the illegals. They're paying for everything, and they're in trouble right now. So with all this happening right now, and especially let's bring in the Epstein files, with the Epstein files exposing the politicians, Hollywood, dignitaries across the world, you could see there's a lot of resignations. We can see there's one person that already attempted suicide, and it looks like suicide weekend's coming early. And every day that passes, these people, they're finding it very, very difficult to actually conduct business, to go out and make speeches. Soon, I don't even think they'll be able to be walking down the streets. I think they're going to have to hide everywhere because the rest of the evidence has not been produced yet. This is just the introduction. This is just the beginning of it all. And you can see they're going to become very, very desperate. Now, I do believe that Trump, from the very, very beginning, knew that Ukraine, the EU, the deep state players, they were going to be the problem. And as of right now, you can see they are the problem. They do not want peace because, again, if they lose Ukraine, they lose pretty much everything. They have no distractions. Everything will be exposed. The biolabs, the laundering of the money, everything that they did through Ukraine will be exposed to the world. And they know this. So what are they doing? They are now bringing Ukraine into the EU, and they're actually setting it up so they can actually launch World War III. And you can see how they're doing it right now. Number one, they're putting a lot of pressure on Slovakia and Hungary because, again, the elections are coming up and they want to take control of these countries. Plus, they are now hitting the oil facilities in Russia to get Russia to do something. And there's talk of the European Union bringing in pieces and parts so Ukraine can build some type of nuclear weapon. Now, of course, they're going to make it look like, hey, we're not doing anything. And of course, they're not going to do it right out in front of everyone so they could see it. They're going to do it behind the cover of night. So this way they have the ability to use a nuclear weapon. Now, I do believe most likely this will probably be the event, the Cuban Missile Crisis type of moment. Because once again, once Russia sees this, they're not just going to sit back and say, oh, look, they got a nuclear weapon. Okay, no big deal. They're going to say, no. We know what you're going to use this for, and we're going to have a standoff at this point. So I do believe we're going to have some type of sum of all fears type of moment, and Trump is going to use this to usher in peace. And I do believe at dawn, Trump will win, because you ever saw the movie Sum of All Fears? Basically, the Russian president, the United States president, they got together. They used back channels to communicate with each other while the deep state players tried to push us into World War III. And I do believe we're approaching that same type of scenario right now, because as of right now, the EU is meeting with Ukrainian officials. They're talking about bringing Ukraine into the EU. We know that if there is an attack on Ukraine, then the rest of the European countries have to go to war. And out in Paris, they lit up the Eiffel Tower with the Ukrainian colors. They made the flag colors. So they're all for Ukraine. They're all for keeping this war going. And they're all for World War III. This is what they're trying to do. Now, I do believe that Trump and the Patriots, they know the playbook. They know that this is what they're trying to do, and time is running out for them. The reason why they're doing this is because think about what Trump and the Patriots are doing right now. They're exposing all their crimes. Right now, we have grand juries that are looking over all the cases. And they know once all of this comes out and people realize that these people overthrew the United States government. And yes, there are foreign countries that are involved in this. I wouldn't be surprised if it was the EU and many others. And once this comes out, they're screwed. Do you think Starmer, Macron, Merz, and the rest will be able to stay in power? Do you think the EU, the way we know it today, will exist? Or do you think the other countries will say enough is enough? We want our sovereignty back. They know time is ticking down right now. They know that Trump now is on the warpath. They know that he's going to expose everything that they have done. And the world is going to see it. And the only way to hide all of this is with a distraction, unless they can win the midterms. If they win the midterms, yes, they will then impeach Trump and they won't have to worry about that. But when they lose the midterms, all they'll have left is one gigantic distraction to bring us into World War III. And I do believe Trump is basically leading them down this path. He will use the event against them to usher in peace. And in the morning, while people are afraid, while people are scared, thinking that we're going to World War III because this is what the fake news is going to build up to, just like they're building this up with Iran, that, oh, we're going to have World War III. Do you really think at this point in time the peacemaker is going to start World War III? Or do you think this is going to be a strategic operation to allow the people of Iran to actually take their country back, just like in Venezuela? I mean, they thought we were going to start World War III when Trump bombed the nuclear facility. It didn't happen. So I do believe assets are in place. And the reason for all of this is to dismantle Iran, because once they lose Iran, they're screwed. All they have left is Ukraine. And they know that Trump is coming after them. They know that they just have a certain amount of time. And if they don't, again, if the deep state players don't win the midterms, they know they have to go full force into starting war. And I do believe this is where Trump is pushing them all, because he knows that with an event like this, he'll be able to usher in peace, because all eyes will be on all of this and nobody will want a nuclear war. Everyone will want the peacemaker to come in and have peace. And again, if you don't have the other side to start or move along with the war, you're not going to have a war. Even if you have an event, it might look scary. It might seem like we're heading towards war. But again, this is one way to actually usher in peace, even though the deep state players don't want to have peace, because the people are going to demand it around the world. And I do believe this is how Trump is going to finally end what's happening out in Ukraine. Because once this occurs, the deep state, Ukraine, the EU will have no choice. They won't have the leverage. Trump will have the leverage, and he will dictate what they're going to do. I do believe this is how it's going to play out in the end. I mean, other things could happen, but we could see we're heading down this path, and you'll see why as we go through the report. Now, before we get to any of that, we can see that the deep state, the fake news, their entire narrative where they're saying, oh, look, Cash, he's on vacation, he's with the team, it's on the taxpayer dollar. That whole thing is completely and utterly falling apart, because what do we see? Oh, that's right. We have Democrat Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. She was out at the Olympics. She was at the hockey game. Did you hear the fake news talking about her at all? No, not at all. Nick Sorta put this out and said, there was a massive uproar on the left about Kash Patel attending the USA versus Canada hockey game, but radio silence about Democrat Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer spending tax dollars to fly out to Italy specifically for the game. Democrats are hypocrites. Absolutely. And actually, when you look at what Cash did, he had it booked months in advance before any of this happened, before, the USA hockey team won. So he already had meetings already planned for this time period. And once again, their entire narrative is completely and utterly falling apart. Now, since the women's hockey team won and the men's hockey team won, Trump invited the women's hockey team, but they declined Trump's invitation. Now they're saying they're too busy, their schedule and everything else. It's not good. Really, it's not good to meet the president. You just don't have the time for that. But the men's hockey team, they said, absolutely, we will go and meet the president. And they had the plane. They picked them up in Miami, and they flew them to D.C. to meet the president. And once again, this should tell you everything you need to know. And it really does. Just like you could see out in New York with the new mayor, Mamdani. He has now convinced the people to hate the police. And the people in New York don't want the police, just like the people in Seattle don't want the police. Actually, I should really just say Antifa, the illegals, and the brainwashed. The majority of the people want the police, actually. Same thing with Oregon. And you could see during the snowfall, the blizzard that happened in the Northeast, we saw people throwing snowballs at the NYPD in Central Park, which is disgusting. And once again, all these people should be arrested. Detectives Endowment Association put this out and said, statement from DEA President Scott Monroe. What we saw in Washington Square Park today was not harmless fun. It was deliberate, outrageous, and dangerous attack on uniformed police officers. The Detectives Endowment Association is calling on Mayor Mamdani and District Attorney Bragg to ensure every individual responsible for this illegal behavior is prosecuted. No free pass, no get out of jail free card. Make no mistake, detectives will do what they always do. They will identify those involved and they will apprehend them. Our men and women in blue deserve to be safe. They deserve to be protected, and they deserve to be respected. They earn it every single day. And basically, just because it's a snowball doesn't mean anything. You are attacking an officer of the law. These people should be arrested, and I do believe they will hunt them down and they will be arrested and charges will be brought against them, even if the mayor doesn't support this. Because once again, you could see what the deep state players are trying to do. They're trying to brainwash the people against the police of this country. And you can see it happening all across the country. And yes, the ICE officers, they are federal officers. So this is all included. But you can see out in Minnesota, the drawdown doesn't mean there's no ICE agents there. It just means they didn't need as many to apprehend the people, because now the local government is actually cooperating with the ICE agents, and they're there to apprehend the criminal illegals. And the people out in Minnesota, they're saying, yeah, ICE is still very active out there, active as ever before. And they absolutely are, because it doesn't mean that Trump just gave up. But you can see that Trump has won once again in the Court of Appeals. Eric Daugherty put this out and said, U.S. court rules in favor of President Trump and Scott Bessent's IRS sharing data with DHS and ICE to speed deportations. Let's go. Another victory for deportations. Nothing will slow it down. And that's absolutely true. And what's very interesting is that the illegals who are probably working illegally because they're here illegally, they're getting paid, and now we have their data. That's very, very interesting. So once again, this is going to speed up the process like we've never seen before. And we could see that since the Epstein files have come out, the deep state players now are struggling. Think about all the people that actually went up against Trump and called him a pedophile and said, oh, he was in the Epstein files, he's the criminal, he's the womanizer. And all these people, every step of the way, it always shows that it's them who are the problem. They're the pedophiles. They're the womanizers. They're the ones who have been having sex with young women or men or boys, I should say. And you could see every single time it boomerangs on them. Eric Daugherty put this out and said, CBS News contributor Dr. Peter Attia has resigned from the network after his ties to Jeffrey Epstein were exposed by the files. The house of cards is crashing down. The Trump's DOJ's files release has exposed a lot of people. And yes, a lot of the people have resigned. And think about it. Former Norwegian Prime Minister Jagland, he attempted suicide shortly after being charged with corruption in connection to Jeffrey Epstein. And it looks like suicide weekend has started early. And most likely, as things start to heat up and more evidence comes out, you're probably going to see a lot more people take their lives. And think about how many people are now resigning, how many people are exposed. And this is going to get worse and worse as time goes on. And the question is why? Because this is just the beginning phase of all of this. You have to remember, the deep state players, they didn't want the grand jury information. They wanted the information that they had control over. They wanted that information out there because they were trying to use this against Trump. But now everything has changed. The tables have been turned. And now they don't have control of the additional information that will be coming out. Remember, as of right now, I'm sure there's a lot of information that's not being released because why? It's being used in an investigation. It's being used in a grand jury, especially videos, especially recordings, especially other documents. Why would you give that to the public if you're going to indict people? It's like the Russian collusion grand jury trials that are going on right now. You don't release that information because a grand jury has it. We have an ongoing investigation. Later, you see the indictment. You see who was under investigation. And I do believe we're going to see this with Russian collusion, Alpha Bank hoax, overthrow of the United States government, everything that has to do with Epstein. And what's very interesting, it looks like Epstein might have kept other information in other places across the United States. Mary Nafal put this out and said, Epstein had at least 6 secret storage units across the U.S. full of hard drives and photos. Authorities never found them. Florida, New York, possibly New Mexico, rented between 2003 and 2019. He paid thousands per month to hide computers, CDs, pictures, files. Here's the part that's insane. Epstein allegedly hired private detectives to clean out his properties before police raids. He paid Riley Corrali Detective Agency $38,500 in just 5 months in 2010. 2009 email from one of those detectives. I learned that the plaintiff's counsel are looking to get the computers and paperwork I took from Jeffrey Epstein's house prior to the search warrant. I have them locked in storage. Epstein had early warning about the raids. Someone was tipping him off. So he sent people to grab hard drives and evidence before cops showed up. The storage units were never discovered. What was in them is unknown. Florida law let storage facilities auction off abandoned units after 90 days for non-payment. So there's a non-zero chance someone at an estate sale in Florida bought a storage locker full of Epstein's hard drives for $200 and has no idea what they have. Or the FBI quietly seized everything and buried it. Or someone connected to Epstein emptied them first. Either way, the man had a network of secret evidence vaults across America and took the locations to his grave. Or maybe others have that information and they haven't revealed that information is kept in a certain location. What happens if FBI 1.0, before Kash Patel, took that information and hid it and kept it safe so no one would ever find it? What happens if FBI 2.0 knows where that information is? I mean, Kash found a secret room, found information that was being hidden. Is it that far-fetched to think that that information might be someplace that the FBI might find right now? I think it's a very, very good chance. But let's see how this all plays out. This is going to be very, very interesting. Now, we could see that the deep state players, every day that passes, they're now moving to censor as many people as possible because, once again, we can see what's happening. We can see where we're all headed. We can see that as they push their events, they want to control the narrative. Now, of course, they're using the excuse to keep the children safe. That's why everybody has to show their ID. No, it's to track. It's to manage. It's to shut people down. Because once you have your ID and it's hooked to your account, it makes it that much easier to track you. It makes it that much easier to censor you. And you could see the UK right now is fining Reddit $14 million for failing to keep children safe, including not checking the age of users accessing its platform. So once again, this is what they're trying to do. But again, the hypocrisy, and as the world turns, put this out, is at another level right now because Keir Starmer signed off on CAWN, C-A-W-N legislation, giving over 13,000 child rapists a caution instead of prosecuting them. They voted no against a grooming gang inquiry, Labor-funded pie in the 90s. So once again, these people are all for pedophilia. These people are for Epstein. These people are for grooming. These people are for human trafficking, women trafficking, child trafficking. And this whole thing about keeping the children safe, that's not what this is all about. Because you have to think of it in the opposite way. Everybody besides the children are going to show ID because the children don't have ID. And they won't be able to get on to the social media platforms. Only the adults with ID will have to show their ID. And that should tell you everything you need to know right there. Now, they're going to take this to the next level, of course, because once they can't control who's saying what, even with the IDs, they're going to have to move in a different direction. Now, they will use this the best as they possibly can, but they won't be able to do that here in the United States. Yes, there are some states that are trying to do this, just like the vaccine passport. But again, they're not going to be able to get this off the ground because the entire country, again, is not going to go along with this, especially if the state government is telling you, who could say what. This is a violation of your constitutional rights. Doesn't matter if it's law or not, because again, if it's against the Constitution, it's null and void. So this is not going to work out the way they think it's going to work out. They will try, but they will fail in the end, which means to control the narrative, moving us into a place where they're going to try to push us to World War III and have a major event like a cyber attack, they're going to have to do something else, which I do believe that's what they're planning to do. Now, you could see what is happening at this point in time. You can see that Trump is dismantling the deep state players across the globe. And yes, he's doing this in Venezuela. Yes, he's doing this in Mexico right now. And yes, soon Iran, then Ukraine. And once again, we don't have to invade Mexico to dismantle the entire deep state system. We have different individuals within Mexico that are assisting the United States in dismantling the deep state system. But what's very interesting is that Che Bose looked at the Mexican drug cartel. They're using Jeeps with Ukrainian flags on them, which is kind of odd. Che Bose says Mexican drug cartel gangsters fighting the Mexican government even have Ukrainian flags on their armored Jeeps. Colonel Tanner Watkins responded to this and said, U.S. tax dollars at work. Every conflict the U.S. funds is a laundering operation for the CIA and intel agencies to move assets around. Pay attention. So that is very, very interesting. And the other thing that we've come to find out is that, yes, we know that El Mencho, he was killed, but this individual, Nemesio Cervantes, also known as El Mencho, illegally came to the U.S. in the 80s, and by the 90s, he was in prison for drug trafficking in California. Ryan Savendra put this out, saying after serving his prison sentence, he was deported back to Mexico, where he built his criminal network, which eventually became the CJNG after it split away from the Sinaloa cartel. People this dangerous should not be deported, especially to countries like Mexico where corruption is rampant. Drug traffickers and terrorists should be locked up for life in the U.S. or given the death penalty. Mexico does not have life sentences, nor do they have the death penalty. And this is why Trump is sending a lot of these people to El Salvador. Because, again, these people are very, very dangerous. They're criminals, the worst of the worst. And you don't want to release them back into the country where they can actually build a terrorist organization within that country and then use it against the United States of America. But Trump, he has quietly got Mexico to hand over 100 cartel leaders, including El Mencho's brother. So Trump, he is bringing these people here to stand trial. And I wonder where these people will be sent off to. Really think about that for a second. So Trump, as of right now, he is dismantling the entire deep state system that they established, that they protected. And yes, they protected the cartels every step of the way. And every step of the way, the deep state players, they're losing their leverage. And yes, Mexico is going to be cleared out. And remember, Trump, he designated the cartels as terrorist organizations. Think about why he did this. It allows him to do what he's doing right now. He went into Venezuela. They're controlled by cartels. The deep state players fund them money. In Mexico, the cartels run the country. The deep state players assist with that. They're terrorist organizations. Same thing in Iran. Same thing in Ukraine. And this is why Trump has done this, because it makes it a lot easier going after all these different terrorist groups, cartels, you name it. David Polides put this out and said, Mexico is on the verge of changing forever. If the cartels realize they can't take over the country, Mexico is doomed. Their leadership is bought off by cartels, which is why their president didn't want our special forces going in. They're now paying a heavy toll. Anyone with a partial brain would never travel there now, and Mexico will lose billions of tourism dollars. Their police are scared, seriously scared of cartels and what they might do to their families, which is why law enforcement in Mexico is worthless against the cartels. The greatest mistake the Mexican government ever made was not taking Trump up on his offer to send in our special forces. And I wouldn't be surprised as things start to break down and it gets worse there. They might ask the United States, listen, we need some teams to come in to assist and remove the cartels. Now, of course, the president of Mexico is going to continually fight back. Actually, it looks like she's going to try to sue Elon Musk for saying that she's controlled and she's working with the cartels. I mean, this is the biggest thing that she's worrying about right now. Instead of going after the cartels, she's worrying about suing Elon Musk and X. I mean, really think about this for a second. And I think that should tell you everything you need to know right there. But I do believe in the end, the cartels are going to be wiped out in Mexico, just like Trump is stopping the cartels in Venezuela and actually suffocating them because they're not able to actually move their product out of Venezuela, which means there's no money coming in there. The same thing is going to happen in Mexico. Trump shut down the wall, shut down drug trafficking, shut down human trafficking, shut it all down. Then Trump is handing those authorities in Mexico certain information where they can go after the cartels. So the cartels, they're being strangled. They're not making their money like they did before. And now the law enforcement, the law officers of Mexico, they're going after these people. Now, I wouldn't be surprised as time goes on that, the U.S. might work with the Mexican officials and they might assist in removing the cartel. Already, they handed over 100 cartel members. I think that tells you everything you need to know right there. And think about it. Remember when Trump said, listen, we can't have China taking over the Panama Canal? And Trump says one way or another, it's going to end. Well, it looks like a court ruling shows that the government of Panama needs to take back control over both entrances to the Panama Canal, and they canceled the Chinese contracts. So once again, Panama right now has control over the canal, and China is now struggling every step of the way. Now, when you really look at this and you step back and you take the 40,000-foot view, you could see that Trump now is dismantling the deep state system, the system that they established where they laundered the money, they trained their terrorists, they did, they shipped or smuggled the drugs and the people all over the world. All of this is coming to an end. And you could see that they're going to be becoming very, very desperate to stop all of this. And Trump now has set his sights on Iran. The Mexican authorities, they're now handling the cartel in Mexico. Trump now is going after Iran. And what's very interesting is that a news report came out that Iran is close to purchasing CM-302's anti-ship missiles from China. And according to the news report, and this coming from Visegrad 24, the supersonic missiles have a range of about 290 kilometers and are designed to evade shipborne defenses by flying low and fast. The deployment would significantly enhance Iran's strike capabilities. Now, the story came out and everyone's like, oh, the Chinese are going to supply them all these missiles right now. Well, you have to remember, these negotiations have been going on for 2 years. They're in the final stages, but that doesn't mean the next day they're going to get the weapons. So if they actually complete the deal, it might take months or a year for Iran to get these type of weapons. And by that time, it will all be done. Actually, probably the contract will be canceled. Because once again, I do believe Trump and team will be negotiating with the new leadership of Iran. So at this point in time, yes, it sounds scary, but I don't think these weapons are going to be brought into Iran at this point. At this point, Iran is in trouble. They don't have the weaponry. They don't have the vessels to compete with the United States. They don't have the planes to compete with the United States. So they are trapped in all of this. And I do believe that Trump and the Patriots, I think Trump, just like everything else, when he plans to go into Iran, Putin, Xi, and the other nations, they're not going to get involved. Because Trump is not here to start World War III. He's here to actually remove the leadership or allow the people to remove the leadership to take back their country. Look at Venezuela. It was a tactical strike. They went in. They used a new weapon to disarm the people, the soldiers, and they were able to remove Maduro. Was the whole country blown up? Were our troops on the ground? Did we go to World War III? No, but everyone was talking in those terms. The same thing with Iran. At this point, the United States is working with Israel. Israel knows Iran inside and out, which means if we're working together, it means that Iran is going to be brought to its knees. And I don't even think it's going to be as bad as everyone thinks. I think it's going to be a surgical strike. I think certain leadership are going to be removed, or they will flee on their own, and the people will be able to take back control of their country. And what's very interesting is that the CIA, they put out a post on X, and it was written in Persian, and it's a message to the Iranian people. And it says, "Hello, the Central Intelligence Agency can hear your voice and wants to help you. People are trying to reach out to us from around the world, and we're offering instructions on how to do that safely, securely. Contacting the CIA. Here are the step-by-step instructions. Use a secure device and browser. Do not use your home work computer. Use a separate device purchased with cash if possible. Employ an up-to-date browser like Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, or Apple Safari. Activate private browsing mode, incognito mode in Chrome, private browsing in Firefox, Safari to prevent your activity from being saved. Clear your history. Use a VPN. Access the dark web via Tor. Download and use the Tor browser for anonymity. Navigate to the CIA secure Onion site. This ensures your connection is encrypted and hidden. Submit information securely on the site." And they go through all of this, showing the people of Iran on how to communicate with the CIA. And remember, this is CIA 2.0. They're not there to help the Ayatollah. They're not there to protect the Iranian government and the deep state players within Iran. The CIA right now, under Radcliffe 2.0, they're there to assist and help the people take back control of the country. That is the difference this time around. And you can see the fake news. They're trying to push World War III, and they're trying to use fake information to try to get something started. And they're hoping to, confuse the situation so things go wrong. But again, Trump and the Patriots, they're in control of all of this. And Trump, he put this out on Truth and said, "Numerous stories from the fake news media have been circulating stating that General Daniel Cain, sometimes referred to as Raisin Cain, is against us going to war with Iran. The story does not attribute this vast wealth of knowledge to anyone and is 100% incorrect. General Cain, like all of us, would like not to see war. But if a decision is made on going against Iran at a military level, it is his opinion that will be something easily won. He knows Iran well in that he was in charge of Midnight Hammer, the attack on the Iranian nuclear development. It is a development no longer, but rather was blown to smithereens by our great B-2 bombers. Raisin Cain is a great fighter and represents the most powerful military anywhere in the world. He has not spoken of not doing Iran or even the fake limited strikes that I have been reading about. He only knows one thing, how to win. And if he's told to do so, he'll be leading the pack. Everything that has been written about a potential war with Iran has been written incorrectly, and purposely so. I'm the one that makes the decision. I would rather have a deal than not. But if we don't make a deal, it will be a very bad day for the country and, very sadly, its people, because they are great and wonderful. And something like this should never have happened to them. President DJT. Letting everyone know, yes, Trump is going to go and use everything he possibly can to do what? To have peace, to negotiate, and actually remove the government that is there now. He's not going to do it. He's going to have them do it themselves and allow the people to have a fair election. And Trump, he just let us know that he's bringing the Armada to Iran. And he's telling the Ayatollah and those in power, it's time to let the people have control of the country. And you can see he's continually doing this because what is happening? Well, he shut down Venezuela, the oil trafficking, human trafficking, drug trafficking, all the money that's been going out to the different countries like Cuba, to Iran, that has come to a halt. The economies now are suffering, just like we reported. Cuba is having a major problem with power. They're not getting the funds that they need. And you can see that everything now is falling apart. And I do believe that eventually what's going to happen, and Trump has continually said this, that Iran, they want to talk. They want to work out a deal. And I do believe in the end, the Ayatollah is going to be removed and the people are going to take control of the country. And what's very interesting is that Kalshi, as we know, they are a prediction market. And the question is, will the Ayatollah be out as supreme leader? And right now, 26% say yes before April 2026. 38% say yes before July 1st, 2026. And 48% say yes before September 1st, 2026. So as of right now, you can see that the people, they believe, and as you go further out in time, they believe eventually what's going to happen is that the people are going to take control of Iran. And I do believe that the odds are going to rise. And remember, Kalshi is the first and only legal prediction market in the U.S. After years of working with the federal government, Kalshi got historical regulatory approval from the CFTC that enabled it to offer a new asset class called the event contracts, which allow traders to take positions on whether a future event will happen or not. Like with stocks or commodities, people can now trade on any event that has economic or social relevance to them. And if you'd like to join up with Kalshi, all you got to do is go to kalshi.com/X22 and get a free $10 credit when you trade $100. That is kalshi.com/X22 or click the link in the description. Now, once again, if the deep state players, as they always do, if they fight back and they don't cooperate, yes, I do believe Trump, with the assistance of Israel, will most likely do something. I don't mean there's going to be troops and we're not going to have our armed forces, come up to the beach and march across Iran. I do believe it will assist the people in taking back their country. And they will be in control. But we'll have to see how this all plays out. But you can see out in Ukraine, we can see that Ukraine, under the leadership of the EU and the deep state players, they struck Russian oil pumping station that transmits oil into Hungary and Slovakia. We discussed this yesterday. They did this on purpose because, again, the elections are coming up. They're trying to starve these countries from getting oil. And we could see that, once again, they're trying to use everything they possibly can to put pressure on Hungary and Slovakia. And again, they don't want to go along with the EU, but the EU is demanding Hungary and Slovakia agree to expanding the war. So the European coalition of the willing is now targeting key Russian infrastructure that supplies energy products to European countries who are not in compliance with the EU dictates of war. So that's very, very interesting. And Putin says that threats to energy pipelines sabotage the peace process with Ukraine. So let's see. Did they do this on purpose? Do they want to sabotage the peace plan? Are they putting pressure on certain European nations? Are they trying to start a war? Absolutely. This is what they're trying to do. And think about it. The European leaders are attacking their own European allies through the use of Ukraine. So basically, they don't care who they go to war with, do they? And this is what a dictatorship looks like. This is what a one world government looks like. Now, the EU nations are starting to see the true nature of the EU. Marin Nafal put this out and said, German MEP just called Hungary and Slovakia's prime ministers Putin admirers, war profiteers, and quislings on the record. Michael Galler said history books will remember them. Quisling is not a casual insult. That's calling them traitors. It's named for Vidkun Quisling, who collaborated with the Nazis in Norway during World War II. Galler just compared Viktor Orban and Robert Fico to Nazi collaborators in the European Parliament. Wow. Where is all this going? I think we're starting to see. Now, what's very interesting is that Ursula von der Leyen, the EU president, visited Kiev. But again, Brussels humiliated her. Why? Because, again, she didn't have what she promised. Jim Ferguson put this out and said, European Commissioner President Ursula von der Leyen arrived in Kiev expecting to announce a new wave of anti-Russian sanctions and a massive $90 billion financial package for Ukraine. Instead, she arrived empty-handed. Why? Hungary blocked the decision. Budapest is demanding Ukraine restore Russian oil transit through the Druzhba pipeline, calling the supply restrictions political blackmail, and warning the Hungarian energy security is non-negotiable. This is bigger than one diplomatic setback. It exposes a growing fracture inside the European Union itself. Now, I don't believe that the EU really cares at this point. I think what they are trying to do is they're trying to push World War III as best they possibly can. And if they have to go up against a European nation, I don't think it really bothers them. They don't care. As you can see with Germany calling the president of Hungary and the president of Slovakia traitors now. And Ursula von der Leyen says, yes, there is a way for Ukraine to become a member of the European Union. The answer is very clear. Of course, Ukraine is on a good way to become a member of the European Union. Now, I do believe she wants to speed this up because, again, if there's an attack on Ukraine, it's then an attack on the entire European Union, which means the European Union will then assist in the war. I do believe that's where all of this is going. They're setting it up step by step, and you can see it very, very clearly. Now, the other thing that's very interesting, and Che Bao's put this out, London and Paris are preparing to arm Kiev with nuclear bomb. And this is coming from the Russia's SVR Foreign Intelligence Services. The goal is to give Ukraine leverage for favorable peace terms by possessing nuclear or a dirty bomb. Their plan to transfer components and tech to make it appear as Ukraine's own development. So, again, is the EU going to say, hey, by the way, we just gave them all the technology, here's the uranium, here's everything that they need to create the bomb? Or are they going to say that, hey, look, Ukraine came up with it. Ukraine are the ones who actually developed it. I do believe most likely this is probably their plan in doing all of this. So the claim, once again, originates from the Russians' Foreign Intelligence Service, letting everyone know that most likely this is the direction that they're heading in. Now, again, they're probably going to use some type of an event or something with the weapon that Ukraine builds or is being given. And once the Russians find out that they have this, they're going to do something, aren't they? Because Dmitry Medvedev, deputy chairman of a Russian Security Council, issued a bombshell warning that Russia would use non-strategic nuclear weapons against Ukraine and potentially the UK and France if Western nuclear tech is transferred to Kiev. So if this should occur, they're saying that, yes, Russia will do something. Now, again, Putin is in contact with Trump, and I do believe there are certain parties, deep state players, who are going to try to push this. I think Trump and Putin are in line in saying, no, we're not going to start World War III. This reminds me of Sum of All Fears when you really start to take a look at this. Because you have the deep state players fooling around with nuclear weapons. They're going to use nuclear weapons. There might be a Cuban Missile Crisis where there's a standoff and maybe there is an event. And I do believe that Trump and Putin are in line saying, no, we're not going to start World War III. We will actually usher in peace and destroy the entire agenda of the deep state players. Now, is this going to look scary as this occurs? I do believe so. Will there be an explosion? Maybe, maybe not, to push the scare event. So we'll have to see how this all plays out, but it looks like that we're heading in this direction. I do believe once all said and done, and there is a peace deal, and I do believe once this happens, Trump will actually dictate the terms, and he will negotiate with Putin once the deep state, the EU, and the rest are exposed in doing all of this. This is how I do believe Trump will be able to get all the leverage that he needs to usher in peace. But let's see how this all plays out. This is going to be very, very interesting. Now, the other thing that's very interesting is we know that there's been many, many attempts to assassinate President Trump. Now, once again, you have to remember, President Trump is dismantling the deep state players, and he's going to dismantle the Federal Reserve System, which is the third central bank in this country. And every time a president either attempts or removes the central bank, they're either assassinated or there's an assassination attempt. If you look back in history, you have Lincoln who actually introduced the greenback, went against the central bank. They removed him. You have Andrew Jackson, who campaigned on getting rid of the second central bank, and they tried to assassinate him. They failed. We have Kennedy, who went ahead and released the silver certificate, which completely went up against the central bank system. They removed him. Trump now is creating the parallel economic system, the tariff system, and this is why they're suing him. It's the central bank, it's foreign nations, it's the globalists who don't want this to happen, and they try to assassinate him multiple times. Because you have to remember, the funding for the deep state players comes from where? The central bank system. That is the source. So think about it. The last individual who attempted to assassinate Trump went ahead, got onto the property of Mar-a-Lago, and he was carrying a shotgun and a gas can. Was he trying to burn down Mar-a-Lago? Most likely, yes. Was he setting something up for a later time? Maybe, maybe not. But what's very interesting is that federal and local authorities have arrested the suspect accused of attempting to carry out an arson terror attack on the DHS ICE office in Idaho. Sarah Elizabeth George. She's 43 years old. You know what she had with her? Gas cans. That is very interesting. Has the narrative gone out to all these people? Start using gas cans, burn the places down? Maybe, maybe not. But let's see how this all plays out in the end. Now, the other thing that's very interesting is, we mentioned this yesterday, Gavin Newsom, he was speaking to an audience of black people and basically told everyone that, look, I'm as stupid as you, so I can communicate with you. Basically, he's racist. But afterwards, what did they do? They tried to say like, oh, he's dyslexic. It's for his book. That's why he was pushing all this. So Susan Crabtree asked Newsom's office, do you have any information that shows that he's dyslexic? Can you provide that to me? And this is what she says. What about that Gavin Newsom dyslexia diagnosis? Can the government provide any paperwork related to his dyslexia diagnosis at any time of his life? Newsom's comm team just now tells me to F off. That's interesting. Why wouldn't they provide that if they're telling everyone that's what he had? Oh, that's right. It's a cover-up. That's what they're really doing here. They needed to spin all of this because he messed up. And now he's going to be losing all the black votes. Actually, I think the country, as he's running for president, or, threw his hat into the presidency, I don't think the people across this country are going to be looking at him going, yeah, this is the guy. And Trump, he decided to say, wow, Gavin Newsom just dropped out of the presidential race. But he hasn't really dropped out of the race. But Trump is letting everyone know because of what he just did, he's going to be dropping out of the race. And of course, Gavin Newsom's office said, no, he didn't drop out of the presidential race. Tick-tock, that time is coming, and it's approaching very, very quickly. Now, the other thing that's very interesting, and when people look at all these individuals that have been in office, 40, 50, 60 years, people say, wow, these people, they keep getting elected. How is this possible? Well, once again, these people aren't elected. They're installed. And if there is someone who is opposing them, who might get the votes where the votes might override their rigged system, they get rid of them. They do it every single time. What do I mean by this? Just look at Maxine Waters. Maxine Waters' longtime political opponent, Omar Navarro, was just sentenced to 4 years in federal prison in California court today. The Biden DOJ indicted him in 2023 for a financial crime comparable to a mistake on your tax return. The 2023 criminal indictment claims Omar misused a total of $36,000 out of nearly $2 million that was raised throughout his 4-year congressional campaigns. In comparison, there are many murderers who receive sentences less than 4 years. Now, why did they do this? Because, again, he had a lot more votes than Maxine Waters, and the amount of voters that were voting for him would override the cheating system, and Maxine Waters wouldn't have a chance. So when you look at this, you could see this is what they do. If they can't be installed and there's an opponent that might override the rig system, they get rid of that person and they set them up. This is what they were trying to do with Trump, but it failed. And soon it's going to fail across the board. Now, the other thing that we could say is that we know that accountability is coming, but I do believe a lot of these individuals, they'll probably commit suicide. We could see this already with the former prime minister of, I think it was the Netherlands, where he tried to commit suicide after the Epstein information came out. And I think most of these people, their cause of death might be from an illness, maybe like the Clintons or others like Biden, because right now they're letting everyone know that Biden's battling cancer. It's spread to his bones. So if everyone's looking for accountability from a lot of these people, I don't think we're going to see it. I think what we're going to see is a lot of these people are going to they're going to come down with certain illnesses. They're going to pass away. And basically, I wouldn't be surprised if the Trump administration will give them this choice. It's either you stand trial or you do it your own way. And I do believe there have been multiple posts about this. So this is just the beginning, and it looks like the Washington Post has already started the narrative, letting everyone know that the cancer that Biden has, it has gone to his bone. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see a funeral coming up very, very soon. They'll probably wait and use it for a distraction. But let's see how this all plays out. This is going to be very, very interesting. Now, the other thing that's really interesting is we know that it's coming up to the time where the Clintons once again have to testify behind closed doors in front of the Oversight Committee. Now, they're trying to figure out a way where they don't have to come into D.C. They're trying to figure out a way where they don't have to testify behind closed doors. They want this made public. And it seems like there might be stories out there letting everyone know that the testimony might be done in Chappaqua. Now, Paul Sperry put this out and said the House Oversight Committee has agreed to let Bill and Hillary Clinton testify virtually from the comfort of their home in Chappaqua. And then there's a community's note saying that the deposition are scheduled in person in Chappaqua. Then James Comer said, this is all fake. It's 100% false. They are testifying in person in front of the Oversight Committee under oath. Hillary's deposition is Thursday and Bill's Friday. Both depositions will last for many hours and will be made public. So once again, they're trying to figure, I think it's the Clintons, the fake news, and everyone else trying to figure out a way how they can maneuver around this. Now, I wouldn't be surprised, once again, once they testify, and I think they should come to D.C., they should trek in, they should testify behind closed doors, and again, this should be made public afterwards. Yes, those things that are classified will be redacted, but once again, I do believe they should do what everyone else does. There's no special privileges here. And you know they're going to plead the fifth every step of the way. But let's see how this all plays out, because as of right now, time is ticking down. And we know that the State of the Union is coming. It's tonight. And it looks like the Democrats have already selected their designated survivor. And it looks like, as of right now, the Republicans have not. Now, the designated survivor, these are the people that are designated if something should happen. Because you have to remember, you have the president, the vice president, the Speaker of the House, and Congress within the House chambers. Now, what's very interesting about all of this is that there are, I think, over 40, it used to be 30, now it's over 40 Democrats that are not going to attend, which makes me think, are they planning to do something? Now, hopefully nothing happens, but when you have over 40 of the Ds that are not going to attend the State of the Union, it makes you think, if they're not there, are they planning to do something? So, verified senators all skipping in-person attendance. Schiff, Murphy, Van Hollen, Markey, Merkley, Murray, Wyden, Gallego, Smith, King. Verified representatives all skipping in-person attendance. You also have AOC, Amy Berra, Becca Balint, Coleman, Pingree, Goldman, Ramirez, Titus Swalwell, Golden, Japal, Moulton, Escobar, and many others. So all these people are skipping in-person attendance. This is something that we have to watch very, very closely. But do you think our founding fathers would want this? No, they wouldn't. Swamp Drainer says, any Democrat who refuses to represent their own constituents by attending the SOTU address is not a professional politician. just a political puppet representing foreign interests over the citizens they claim to represent. And that's absolutely true. Again, they don't really represent the people of this country. And the founding fathers, they would look at this and say, you're trying to divide this nation. The founders broadly feared factions as threats to the republic, viewing them as sources of division that could lead to instability or despotism. George Washington, in his 1796 farewell address, explicitly warned against the baneful effects of the spirit of a party, stating the alternate domination of one faction over another, sharpened by the spirit of revenge, natural to party dissension, is itself a frightful despotism. He argued that the parties encourage ill-founded jealousies and false alarms, kindle animosity, and open doors to foreign influence, echoing criticism of the boycott as deepening polarization. So our founding fathers would never, ever want this, which means these people, they do not report, they do not represent the people of the country. They report to foreign masters. They report to the deep state players. And actually, our founding fathers told us this is what would happen. And you're seeing it right in front of your eyes. It couldn't be any clearer than this. And they were absolutely right once again. Now, the other thing that's very interesting is we know the D's, they have shut down the government. Is it hurting the red states? No, it's actually hurting the blue states. Trump put this out and said the Democrat shutdown is killing the blue states. Yes, because they were using the sanctuary cities. They were using their money laundering to keep their system operational. Now the blue states, they're having a very difficult time because none of this money is coming into them. Think about this. They're hurting themselves. And what's even worse than this is that CNN didn't even broadcast the Angel Family's Remembrance Ceremony. Carolyn Levin put this out and said, CNN is a disgrace. CNN did not broadcast the Angel Family's Remembrance Ceremony at the White House on February 23rd. White House officials and Press Secretary Carolyn Levitt publicly criticized them for skipping it to cover a Northeast blizzard instead. So basically, they had a distraction. And this is what they do. They always use distractions. But what's very interesting is we can see in Massachusetts, a whistleblower, and Trump put this out, a whistleblower details rampant SNAP EBT fraud in Massachusetts. It's in the millions of dollars, probably approaching billions of dollars. Remember, this is their money laundering system across the country. This is how they fund everything. And now it's being exposed. And every step of the way, Trump is showing the people the deep state system. You're seeing it firsthand. And it's getting worse and worse for the deep state players. And it's going to get a lot worse because Trump is going to fill 2 massive court vacancies as he continues to shape the federal judiciary. And basically, he's going to be bringing in new judges because 2 are basically retiring. Chief Judge S. Sutton of the 6th Circuit Court of Appeals based in Cincinnati and Chief Judge Deborah Ann Livingston of the 2nd Circuit Court of Appeals in New York City. They announced their plans to assume senior status later this year. Both of these judges were appointed by George W. Bush. Senior status is a form of semi-retirement, and it creates a vacancy for a new appointee. So the 6th Circuit has a Republican-appointed majority, while the 2nd Circuit has 1-seat majority for Democrat-appointed judges. And Trump is going to be filling these positions. And yes, he has other positions that he has to fill because there's a lot of vacancies. And there's going to be a lot more vacancies. Why? Because once we get control of the House and Senate, there's going to be a lot of judges that are going to be impeached, or many of these judges are going to say, I'm retiring. Let's see how this all plays out. This is going to be very, very interesting. Now, think about it. The deep state players, the Ds, they're trying to convince everyone that Trump is trying to federalize the elections. But the Ds already tried this in 2019. Remember, when they lost the election in 2016, they tried to get rid of the Electoral College, and they introduced H.R. 1 for the People Act of 2019, which means this is not for the people whatsoever. The persistence says, are you unaware that your party Democrats attempted to federalize our elections as its first bill of the House in 2019, Elon says most people have no idea that democracy would already be dead in America if not for the brave actions of Senators Sinema and Manchin. They stopped it. And here's a portion of what was in that bill. The first act of the new Democrat Congress under newly elected Biden was designed to make COVID-era emergency rules permanent. H.R. 1. The For the People Act of 2021 sought to nationalize pandemic voting changes, federally mandated early voting periods, expanded mail-in voting with minimal verification, elimination of state-level photo ID laws, same-day online registration, and even pre-registration for 16 or 17-year-olds. This was the first legislative priority in a nation still paralyzed by COVID-19, not recovery. So basically, what did they try to do? They tried to basically codify their cheating into law. That's what they tried to do. So they tried to federalize the elections. They're the ones who actually tried to do it. Trump is just saying, listen, we should have one-day voting, voter ID, and paper ballots. That's it. They were trying to create the cheating system and have it law. Think about this for a second. They would have basically destroyed America right there and then, but it was stopped. Very, very interesting. But Trump, he put this out because where would all this leading? It's going to show how they actually overthrew the United States government. He's pointing to Mila Joy, and she says, this is how 2020 was looking until about 3 a.m. All systems went down, and when they came back, Biden was magically ahead. They all cheated, obviously. Pass the SAVE Act right now. And when you look at it, you could see Trump was in the lead in Pennsylvania, Michigan, North Carolina, Georgia, Wisconsin, and many, many others. And as soon as everything went down, what happened? They had the 3 a.m. drop, and all of a sudden, Biden was in the lead. It's all fake, phony, and false. They cheated in the election. Then Trump is pointing to Real Robert, and this is what it says. The Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, calls out every single member of Barack Obama's national security syndicate, one by name. John Brennan, James Clapper, James Comey, and Susan Rice, each deliberately and maliciously falsifying intelligence as a means to overthrow the United States government in 2016, in 2020, and 2024. So they actually did it in 2020. Actually, Trump allowed them to do it. Why? He wanted to catch them in the act in the biggest election rigging scheme the world has ever seen. And he used it to wake the American people up. And Gabbard is letting everyone know, yes, we have the proof. We know exactly what they did. But look what happened out in Texas. Election Wizard put this out. Republicans flipped the script. For the first time since early voting began, GOP outvoted Dems yesterday by 9,000 votes. Over 542,000 Republican primary ballots cast in just 6 days, already greater than 50% of 2022's total early votes. So it looks like Texas is going all red. Very, very interesting. Now, the other thing that we could see is that the Ds, they're definitely in panic mode. Why? Because Trump is making the country better and better. Trump is going to be using the economy for the midterms. And this year, since Trump has already set the foundation for the economic system in this country, this year you're going to see the economy take off like we've never seen before. Trump, he's pointing to Stand Up for Trump, and this is what it says. Democrats are in panic mode after devastating new poll finds Americans trust the Republican Party on the economy and inflation by 6 points, tariffs by 2 points, immigration by 11 points, and border security by 28 points. Trump is crushing it. So once again, Trump is going to be using all of this during the State of the Union address, and he's going to demolish the Ds. Now, the Ds, they're going to retaliate by using a communist, which is Gail Spanberger. She just won the election in Virginia. She reversed everything that was going on there and actually made Virginia look like California, or maybe even worse. So she's going to give the rebuttal. So basically, she's going to say things against that Trump did. This is going to be very, very difficult, and it's going to be very difficult for them to actually push this through because, again, Trump and team, they're going to fact check every single thing they say, and it's all going to turn out to be fake, phony, and false. And the people are going to see this. Soon, the world is going to realize something very, very interesting, is that the Democrats are the criminals. They are the deep state. They work hand in hand with the cartels, with the terrorists, with the money launderers, with those people that rig the election, those people that traffic children, those people that basically blackmail and have sex with underage girls and boys. This is what the people are going to learn. They're already learning it. Clandestine put this out and said, the world will soon come to the realization that the Democrats and the cartels are on the same team. They're both assets of the deep state who carry out racketeering operations that fund their global criminal enterprises. Human, drug, and weapon trafficking feeds the eye. This is yet another reason why the Dems are in favor of an open border, why they don't enforce the law, why they let violent gangs operate freely, why they don't want Trump deporting violent gang members, etc. It's because the same people who own the Dems also own the cartels. It's all part of the same global crime syndicate. The Dems are working with the cartels, which means the Dems are engaged in crimes against humanity, which means they are the criminals. Everyone now is going to see who the true enemy of this country is. That's what Trump is doing. He's basically pushing the D's to exactly where he wants them, showing the people the truth. And eventually, as all this information comes out and Trump dismantles their system, people are going to realize these are the enemies of this country, the enemy of the people, the enemy of the Constitution. And once people see this, the people are going to vote against them. Now, of course, you're going to have the 4 to 10% that are brainwashed and they're part of Antifa and everything else. But in the end, it's all going to come down around them. They will cease to exist the way we know them today. They will never, ever win another election. But of course, we have to get there. We have to win the midterms. And yes, they will fight back with everything that they have. But I do believe that Trump, he has the leverage. He knows the playbook. And at dawn, Trump, the people, we win. Why? Because the Patriots are in control. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.